It's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be with you today again and to go through this process. 2 years ago, you began to learn a little bit more about me and my background. And I'll just give a real quick recap of that. Originally beginning my career as a pastor for about between 12 to 18 years, pastoring, and that's what eventually it brought me here to St. Augustine back in 1978. 79, moved here in 79, and worked at a church right on the main drag, which at that time was Trinity Chapel, now is Destiny International, as their co-pastor. Fell in love with the community, as is in most ministerial, had to move away. Moved eventually and traveled around the country doing concerts and speaking engagements. Became pretty sought after to be able to do speaking engagements in different seminars and such. Eventually had an opportunity to buy a TV station, which I did, and built that station from ground up. Eventually sold it, built the first fully digital video production company in the Midwest. And one of the things that it enabled me to begin to fine-tune, which I really enjoyed, was at that time period, digital was just really beginning to come into effect in the mid to late 80s. Digital, the hardware companies were not making open source on their software, so you could not have a seamless means of being able to have a finished product in digital. Sony Broadcast of America, I had found very good favor with them, and they had said, we'll make you our premier house if you can get this accomplished. And so I sat down with all the primary hardware manufacturers in a day's meeting in a conference such as this, and we worked out and hammered out what were consensus between us in negotiations. I'm not big on compromise. I do believe, though, in building consensus between us and what are the goals that each of us have and how can we work together to accomplish our same goals mutually. And at the end of that meeting that day, I was able to hammer out an agreement that each of them would open their source code up so we could actually have a seamless, fluid digital format. And so we became that premier facility for them. That eventually led me through a series of events to South Florida, where I totally changed and became a contractor, becoming familiar with the building industry. Stayed there for 7 years. Eventually wanted to move back to St. Johns County and did. Sold my business down there and came back here by choice because I love it. I wanted to raise my kids in a small town environment, even though it was growing. And I wanted to actually have the opportunity to be able to walk down Main Street and be able to shop if they wanted to in Main Street stores. And so back in 92, when I first began to make that move, though we didn't accomplish it until 94, you could still do that downtown. We, since that time, I got involved in an ISP, built that up as a company, sold it, built a software company, sold it, and had gotten into wireless industry as well. Cell phones, began to work for T-Mobile as one of their management personnel for regional. Took a district, Southeast district that was last in the Southeast, made it the first in 6 months. And in that market, that's a pretty tough thing to do. And so I taught people how to be able to present themselves well and to do excellence and give good service and how to listen to people. I think a key in the job that I'm interviewing for right now to the voters is to learn how to listen to people and how to be able to hear what their concerns are, where their heart is at, what they are wanting to see accomplished, and to be able to take that and translate that into a real realization where they can see it accomplished. Even though we may not agree, we can build consensus on a common term, and that's what I do and have done for years in my business world. Recently, I've gotten involved in the hearing industry, and I love it. I do a lot of service in that industry to our elderly, being the only person in Duval County that actually travels to nursing facilities. I service for the Medicaid group there, and those seniors that don't have the ability to be able to hear. My patients range from 102 years of age down to their 70s. But it's very, very rewarding whenever I have a patient who absolutely cannot hear and is 102 years old, as this one patient was, and suddenly whenever she was able to hear for the first time in years, brighten up and begin, you couldn't stop her in talking. And so it was very, very rewarding, and I enjoy doing that very, very much. So I still do that. I have 4 offices that I deal with. And that's a little bit of what I've been doing in the past. I have decided to run for this office for several different reasons. One is that I do not believe that the budget, though the county has been reducing the budget by approximately $158 million a year for the last 3 years, that was by design, more out of necessity. When you don't have income coming in, you're forced to meet budget in this county. And to plan efficiently means that you're forecasting ahead, and you know when you've got to make adjustments, and you've already planned for those adjustments. It's not a forced hand to have to do it. So I don't view it as being a great accomplishment. I view it upon them as doing it as a necessity. I think that there are still areas that we have a lot of room to be able to make changes in our county budget. I've looked at it, and most recently last week in an article that was here at the St. Augustine Record. It was an interesting point to me that in last year, the budget that was passed was approximately after adjustments were made, somewhere around $554 million. And yet in the record, quoting from the budget office, our budget projections for 2013 will be flat, they said, at $607 million. Now, that was quite amazing to me how they all of a sudden went from a past number of some $40 million less, almost $50 million less, and now it's going to be, they call it, we were going to be flat. So there's a lot of non-transparency that's going on. Numbers, my daddy taught me a system, and that he said early on, son, figures don't lie, but liars figure. And I'm not necessarily saying that any of them are in perhaps lying, but I am saying that they're not transparent. And I looked at what we've been doing within the way that we've tried to, in the millage increase that was done last year, of saying that we needed to do that based upon the communication system that was needed. And in that communication system, they failed to mention several things that there was money that was already in existence for and that we've not tapped into. Instead, we put it upon the shoulders of the taxpayers at an economy that is one of the worst since the Great Depression to be able to shoulder that. It's not been only this commission's fault, it's been a commission's fault for generations, literally. Because in 1996, we knew we had to do this. And yet every generation, every single year, they've passed the buck. The Sheriff's Department had $12.50 given to them out of every traffic ticket that was issued in this county since 1996, amounting to, they think, again, transparency, they think $4 million, of which they think they had $1.7 million left. And so we have I look at it as a violation of how that was supposed to have been spent. Their state legislator said that it was to be spent for a new radio system, not for repairs, and yet they spent it for repairs. I view the leadership as county commissioners as them being over that. And when they're reviewing budgets, they're actually reviewing that budget and seeing where they're spending their dollars and why they're not allocating that money properly. We had our firemen, which I greatly appreciate, but they've spent $1.6 million of a grant that was given to them from Homeland Security for air tanks instead of something that they've said was an extreme necessity, and that is a brand new communication system. And in 2006 and in 2008, they were given 2 grants that would have made possible, had they done as Nassau County did, gave it to the commission to buy radios because the new radio system upgrade. The fire department could have participated in that, but we made it an issue at the last moment. Why? Because it was a deadline that was mandated in 1996 by the federal government of December of 2012. So they were up against a hard wall. It's non-transparency. It's giving partial truths. Our regulations. We build more regulations to continue existence as jobs. We make it very difficult on business development to come here. We've had residential development, but we've not focused on business development. And so that's another issue that I looked at and said, we have to change that. Roughly 10% of our tax base comes from our businesses, and the majority comes from residents. For every dollar collected in revenue from taxes, $1.19 residential is the cost for services. So we're 19 cents behind. And where a major focus is on residents in this county. Business, on the other hand, For every dollar that's collected from them, somewhere, depending upon which numbers that you want to look at, somewhere around the cost for that is around 65 to 85 cents. So we should have been developing way before the last 3 years. This should have been going on for a long time, that we were really saying, is what we're doing in this county making us friendly to businesses? Agriculture is another area that we've abused. Again, for every dollar in revenue that's generated out of our ag, it only has a cost of 35 cents. So they are the ones that are underwriting much of what's going on here in the county in our budgets. And yet we're not being appropriately measured for them. I looked at all of those things. I've said, you know, we just can't continue like this. I need to get involved. And I was asked if I would consider it. My wife and I talked about it, prayed about it. Since meeting with you the last time, I was recently married, and that was something that when we got engaged, she said, listen, I know you ran for office one other time, but I am not interested in being involved in politics. And Tarina, I expressed to her what it was. We talked, we prayed, she met with people. She said, you know, I think that you're the best person to do this job. I'm behind you. So we've set aside in our first year of marriage to be able to do campaigning, and that's what we've been doing. And she's one of my greatest advocates. If you haven't had a chance yet to meet her, to talk to her, I know Thursday night you will get that opportunity. She is a great gal. So that gives you a little bit of a background.
Thank you.
Okay, let me go over some of the issues. You mentioned the millage rate increase. I get the take that you would not have voted for that. The way, is that correct?
That's correct.
County Manager Wanchek has framed the issue this way. Said, what kind of a county do you want? What kind of quality of life do you want in the county? And the commission voted 5-0 in favor of the millage rate increase as a way, from their argument, was to preserve certain services, parks, lights in the parks at night was one example, and they were lobbied very heavily from the people in the Northwest on that, and other issues. So would you address Mr. Wanchek's issue about what kind of quality of life you want? He was arguing that without that millage increase, some of those things would go away.
I think that he was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have many other areas that we could make adjustments in more efficiently spending our money
mm-hmm.
that would have enabled us to move forward. Examples.
Mm-hmm.
It is high time that we as a government change the way that we do our benefits and primarily our benefits for our retirees. We spend about $50 million a year in medical insurance here at the county. Nowhere else within the sector that we all and you all work in do you get 100% paid for yours, or $40 that you have to pay for your benefits. We did that initially generations ago because government was very low paid, and it was a service. It really truly was a service to work in government. So we provided very good benefits and a very great retirement, saying we'll reward you for your service later on. And it was wonderful to do that. Today it's not that way necessarily. And yet we've continued in that same mode, and we have to adjust. We can't continue. So the adjustments could have been made there. There are adjustments that can be made in...
Are you advocating that those people who are now retired not get this benefit?
Oh, no, absolutely not. That would be wrong. Okay. When we have people that are retired, or they are at a certain point within their career path, and the contracts have been there, you have to implement it slowly. You don't affect them. They're already retired. That would be wrong to do.
Okay,
that.
So when would you implement it?
I'd begin, number one, with every new employee that's hired. Mm-hmm. I would also then go to the ones that are there, and I would begin to say we're going to renegotiate contracts and agreements, and we're going to have to begin to have a bigger share that you're going to participate in. Perhaps this year it's 10% or 15%. Our goal is perhaps that we're doing it at a 40% eventually, but we're slowly going to implement that into it. We make sure that the pay scale that they're being paid is not changing in relationship to what their contemporaries are within the private sector, but we make sure that they're taking and participating like everybody else does in the real world.
Okay, so your argument for this is so they wouldn't need the millage increase, but I don't see this, from what I just heard you say, this wouldn't go into effect right away, right?
Oh, it would start into effect right away.
It would have savings right away.
It would have savings right away.
Okay.
Certainly, if you've got, we'll do an immediate savings of $5 million if we took the $50 million number, if we just took that number and said we're going to do 10% as a start. So we've got
10% what? 10% what? What do you
$50 million. $50 million medical insurance.
Okay, so what's this? People, employees are paying this? I mean,
The employee is going to, would begin to pay.
So if I'm retired, I'm going to be paying that?
No, those that are still working would start paying that.
Okay, so this is in essence a pay cut for them?
No, it's not a pay cut.
Well, if they're paying something they're not paying now, their paycheck going home is going to be less, right?
Their paycheck would be less, but it would be more in line with what it is within society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The question has to be.
That's the other. You're talking about medical. What about pensions? You mentioned that as well. I just wanted to drill down on that a little bit.
For those that are already retired,
Mm-hmm.
it does not affect.
Okay.
I disagree with doing that. You have to begin to find a way. Perhaps it's at a person that's maybe as you're beginning before 50% to that. So if you're doing a 20-year retirement, perhaps it's at about 8 years. If you're up to 8 years, we're going to begin to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sliding scale, so that you still have plenty of time to prepare for the retirement. But prior to that, we begin, and especially with any new employee that we're hiring, that we make those adjustments for those of what it is going to be.
Okay. And those new employees will include every county employee. That's including fire, sheriff's office, land planning, county attorney, everyone?
Everybody.
Okay. And those are obviously negotiated contracts. So what are you going to give if you negotiate a contract? If I, let's just say I'm paid $10,000 a year, and Ron wants me to take less money in a contract negotiation, he's going to give me something in exchange for me giving up something. So what would you ask? What would you be giving those employees in exchange for what they're giving up, which is a pension?
Those things would be what we would build the consensus on. We would have to be sitting down and discussing and say we've got to find a liquid, equitable means to be able to work here. How can we take and do that together? And what do you feel like would be a fair thing for you, and what is fair for us, and what we can afford to do? And so we look at that. I think that it's been wrong, even though we've been in an extremely tight situation, that we have not continued to give any kind of an increase and pay along the way for the last really 5 years. And I'm going to step back just a second. The means by which government has operated, I believe, has been really completely an incorrect form of how government should have been operating. We didn't have money in our schools because the capital investment for building new schools was thrown upon the school. We've spent probably, I'm guessing, probably in the neighborhood of $1 billion in the last 30 years, 20 to 30 years in new school buildings. That is money that's now taken away. Developers reap tremendous profits from that. They gave property to them often, but the school was strapped with the buildings. That kept money from education, it kept money from teachers, it kept money from being able to do what they do best. So there should be a complete reorganization of the way that we've been doing that. It's dealing with Tallahassee in that, but it needs to be reorganized. We need to do the same thing on the local level as well, of reorganizing it. It is a process to get through to do it, but it is one that needs to be worked through to get there. Otherwise, we can't. In the long term, we're not going to be able to continue to function unless we're going to take a bigger bite of the tax dollars from the taxpayers. And I don't think that's what they really want us to do. We don't have to attack quality of life issues. To have made the major issue we're going to turn out lights at parks and playgrounds was, in my opinion, a ploy. That was not something that needed or had to be done. But it certainly got the public to come out and address that issue. And it gave the county commissioners strength to be able to lay their hat on it. We can't do this to our kids. But that's not what needed to be done. There were so many other areas that could have been done, and we look at it. I question, I'll give you another example. I was at a forum yesterday. I question when we go to the libraries, and they had an entire array of bookshelves of videos, DVDs, that are free. Why do we compete against Blockbuster, Red Hat, or any of the other companies? Redbox, I guess it's called, Redbox. Why do we compete against them in government? Why do we not have a $1 fee, rental fee for that? Because we don't do that?
So you're saying that we should charge for books in the library?
I'm not saying books, I'm
Well, it's the
saying DVDs.
same argument, because there are bookstores that sell books, there are video stores that sell videos.
Only they don't get to keep them. They don't get to keep them.
That's right, they don't get to keep the videos either.
No, but we can go to Redbox, or I can go to Blockbuster and I can rent it for, I think, what's it, $1.99 a day?
Buck.
A buck a day. I can rent it for a buck.
After 30 days you own it.
Yeah, after 30 days. So I'm not buying it. I'm renting it. So when I'm going to the library, I'm not buying it. I'm checking it out. I'm, in essence, renting it for free. Unless I lose it, and then I pay for it. But I'm not buying it. I'm renting it for free. So why am I doing that?
I know, that's the question.
No, but that's the question, is why do we do that as government?
Well, if you're going to use that argument for DVDs, the same logic applies to books. So you're saying you should charge people to take a book out of the library?
No, because currently I don't have the ability, and there's no business plan that I'm aware of that charges rental for books that I can go to and rent it and return it. That's not the plan that's in the marketplace. We don't do that. I can go over to Starbucks, or not Starbucks, I can go over here to the bookstore and Barnes & Noble. I can sit there and drink a cup of coffee and read one of their books for free. Like I can go to the library. I can't drink my coffee, but I can read the book for free. I can do that, and I can do that at the library, and there's no problem with that. I have no problem at all. But the question has to be asked, why in government do we do some services that's really is a direct competition against business, and we want to continue to provide that service, but at no cost? So why do we do that? And I think that in those areas, books are not even it's not even an equal comparison, because there's nothing in the marketplace that does that. No one does that. But there is in DVDs.
Is there other things in county government that you put on that same level? I understand your argument. Are there other things that you believe the county's competing with? Yeah,
you know, we get into. I look at the way that we do I look at road systems. We have a road department. I think that really government should not be involved in that business. I think that we should be putting that out for bid within private market. They're in the profit. They want to make a profit, and they are efficient, and they make sure that their work crews are efficient. So often in government we don't do that. There is no real accountability. We have a project. We have the way that we do it is I have a budget, and if I do it too fast, then my budget will shrink, and I'm not going to have that much money next time. So we want to stretch it out as long as we can. Well, that's not efficient. It's not the way that we should be doing it. The idea is to do it well and do it efficiently, and you get the project done. We could do more things, even if we had the same budget, if you were actually putting it out, I believe, for bid in the marketplace, that we'd allow the marketplace to do that.
So you're advocating either the elimination or the extreme reduction of the road and bridge department?
I'm putting it out there to be able to take, we relook at that, yes. We look at those things and say, do we do that? People, and immediately you might be saying, well, you're going to lay people off. No, there's going to be people, there will be jobs that will be out there that they can get hired to do. I'm looking at transferring it to the private sector and allowing them to do it efficiently, and a cost savings to us. We don't have to have the trucks. We don't have to have the liability. We don't maintain the liability if the employee gets hurt. We don't maintain the liability on the equipment. If we have an accident, one of our road crews, as that for the example, has an accident on the road, the county no longer carries that liability and makes it a very big target for a liability lawsuit. And we self-insure ourselves for the most part. So it's a huge liability to us. Why do that? Why we should put that out into the private sector and allow it for bid, and allow the road crews in cutting, even in lawn, and cutting our roads, cutting the grass service, and taking the median and keeping it cut. We can do a estimated savings of several tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've seen some numbers as much as $347,000 by taking and changing and having it done by private enterprise to cut and maintain our roadways. So there are a lot of things that we need to re-look at and approach from a different mindset. You know, it used to be government collected taxes to provide services. Today we expand services to collect more taxes. We create more regulations to justify more jobs. And that's not, and if we're going to continue with that same mindset of doing that very same thing and re-electing people into office who have the mindset of taking from government as being my source of income, then we're going to continue in the same way, and taxes will just have to go up. You know, they've said we're safe until I've heard one report, 2016, we're safe. The county said we won't have to raise taxes. So that means they already know they're going to raise taxes in 2016. Why?
Well, their argument is, I'm not advocating for them to say that they're saying that they will have spent down the reserves and property values are still dropping, and they're expected to continue to be dropping by 2016, so that the revenue goes down, and they're balancing the same way the school board is. They're balancing budget by dipping into their rainy day fund.
So instead of doing that, what they should be doing is seriously looking across the board and say, what are things that we're doing that really government was never planned that government should get that involved in that. We've had this is something that should be really debated in a public manner and really get a lot of input in, because I don't think our forefathers ever dreamed that we would be what we are today, and as large and as robust as communities have become. The moving into towns, though you had the eastern coast of Boston and you had the key cities, there was not at all the thought of what it would do across the country of spreading like this, and that families would spread across the country and no longer be close units. And so government stepped in rather than nonprofits taking and stepping up and being able to provide services and helping out in the needs, and government just simply took it on. But the difficulty with that was that accountability became a real problem, because there was no real accountability. They have an endless source of money in taxes, and if I need more, I simply tax more, rather than really saying, wait a minute, are there other ways to do this? Are there partnerships that we should be building? Is it the responsibility of government, smart government, which is a term that's used today, is it the responsibility of government to actually manage and control every aspect of our life? I don't believe so. I think it's a very limited government, and that we should be stepping back and say, wait, how can we can't just walk away from it, but how do we take and involve businesses to do this job better and efficiently than us and lower our tax base?
And just ask, you said that government should not involve every aspect of your life. I'm not aware the government does. What government does every single aspect of your life?
Well, we get here, we are moving very radically into, we now want to get involved in providing every housing for low-income housing and medium-income housing. We've stepping outside of the county level, on the national level, we've said that it's the responsibility that government should make it possible that every person should have a home, and that's what in spite of whether they could afford it or not, that it was a fundamental right. Our Constitution doesn't say that, and so pressure was put upon local banks, our own local banks, that made loans, forced to, so that they could continue doing business and getting money from the government, providing loans to people who had no business owning a home. Home ownership is a privilege. It's not a right. And if I can't maintain my home, I should sell my home and rent. Do I want to do that? No, I'd love to own a home. But if I cannot do that, I should be renting. But the mindset is flipped. And so government gets involved in home ownership. Government gets in home and doing all the repairs. We have here in our own county, again, reported in your paper, that we had out in Hastings, someone that heat and weatherization and the program, the county participates and everybody's involved in that. We put a brand new air conditioning system in someone's home. We put a brand new weatherization of their windows. We did everything for them to have everything, and they really appreciated it. Really? That's the responsibility of government? I don't think so. I looked at that and I said, they should have sold their house. And they said, well, but I've owned that house for 100 years. It's been our family. I understand. Tough times happen. Things happen. I've had things happen in my own life. Tragedies take place. We adjust and we move forward. And I think that instead of government stepping in to do that, they shouldn't. I looked this morning, and again, I read it in the paper this morning, on Meals on Wheels. And I read it and I said, Kathy does a great job. Does probably one of the best jobs. I would not want government to totally handle everything that Kathy does. She does a great job. Officially manages the money. But I look at it and I say, we provide 2 to 3 frozen meals a week? Really? Why is that government's responsibility? Why are there not, I know that having come from a nonprofit background for many years within churches, I know churches want to be involved in helping in that, but a lot of people don't want churches involved today in those things to do it. Well, that's too bad, because they were a great nonprofit source to go to step in and help people. That's why they exist. So I think there's a lot of things we should be re-looking at. If we're only going to stay in that one mindset, then we're going to have a problem.
Let me get, I want to go through some of the things that were on your website. You mentioned in your website talks about impact fees. I assume you're opposed to them?
I am.
Okay. Well, the impact fees are designed, as you well know, to cover the cost of new development. What would you replace that with? The revenue from impact fees?
One of the things that the impact fees originally were for roads and some utilities, period. It went to a tremendous cash cow for the county, not just one. I have a problem. There's a little business right over here across from the cobblestone called Rhinos. $10,000 to move into that impact fee. Now the builder of that plaza paid impact fees. The county said what the traffic flow was going to be for that plaza upon us. The impact fees were paid. He paid $10,000 for that, and that happens to be an outreach to youth. My question is, again, really, that makes good sense? I've talked to other businesses who pay $40,000, $50,000 for something that they'd already done. No, it just began to be developed into a huge cash engine to the county. One of the things that I've been reading across the country, and one of the things that I do, I read a tremendous amount from everywhere I can find it. Thank God we have the internet today. But I've been following one of the things called a real estate transaction fee, that is a sliding fee. It takes into account if a person is a lower home value or lower property value, that the cost is very minimal. They would, instead of paying the impact fee, they would pay that fee. A young man that I know of bought a double wide. He paid $6,000 for the double wide, and the impact fees cost him $8,000 to put that on a cul-de-sac on his own well and a septic system. That's ridiculous. Where he should have paid a real estate transaction fee would have been more equitable for that. Higher up, more money. The slides higher, and it pays more effect. You share based upon what you're doing. I think that may be. It's worked very well in Maryland. They've begun to switch to that. I've looked at about 18 other states around the country that are switching to that. It appears to be a really interesting concept. I think that's something that should be looked at. That we diminish impact and replace it with something like that, but that the purpose for it is what it was originally intended for, not this mass thing that we're doing.
The original intent of impact fees was to make the people who are bringing in the growth to pay for it, so the people who are already here don't have to pay for something else's growth. That was the logic behind it.
But we didn't do it. St. Johns County now has approximately $300 million in credits that we've issued for impact fees. That's not making them pay anything. Now, some paid a share. There was a tremendous amount that was paid, but we've continued to give tremendous amounts of credit to these businesses. And the reason that we don't do away with it today is not because we haven't thought about doing away with it. It's because of the legal aspect that we're in. That if we do away with the impact fees, those notes become due and payable. And we don't have $300 million. And we continue in the most recent enticement to bring a developer here, Horton, to get him to move into the county. We gave him impact fee credits because he met a certain criteria. As a businessman, I would be having a real problem if I was wanting to expand and I didn't meet your criteria for why you give him one and you don't give to me. I think within our Constitution, everybody is to be treated equally, not based upon status.
As you are fully aware, they give those credits to people who are bringing in high-paying jobs. They wouldn't give it to a McDonald's, but they might give it to a D.R. Horton, which I guess the average salary is $50,000 to $60,000. So the argument is those people are going to be able to pay taxes, buy houses, and help be engines for the economy. Whereas McDonald's, those are kids in subsistence workforce. They're not elevating the community's standard of living. So
the only problem with Hortons is that he already has 85 employees. They work in Duval County. They either live in and probably most of them live in St. Johns County, because everybody wants to live in St. Johns County. We are a premier facility. Our schools are the best. They want to be here. But so him moving his corporate here is not for anything that he's bringing more jobs. Those jobs are already in existence. If you want to entice a business, you've got to go to the mainstream of what has really been the fuel engine for our economy, and that's not been bigger businesses. It has been smaller businesses, and they do create jobs, and good jobs.
Okay, please share with us your views on CDD fees for subdivisions.
I think that they are exuberant and a slowdown, a tremendous hindrance to our business development in this county. I'm going to use Julington Creek as my example, and I'll use Palencia. Julington Creek, a lot of the strip centers that are empty because businesses simply cannot or don't want to pay the exuberant fees. It's a huge bite out of their bottom line. You have Food Lion that paid $190,000 a year CDD fee. You have a daycare there in Julington Creek that is paying somewhere around $40,000 a year CDD fee. That adds up to about $300 additional that the parents are paying. No business pays those fees, they pass it on. So, and if they don't, they go at a loss and they eventually have to move out. I've talked to, there's a barber that's in Julington Creek, same thing. They charge $5 more a haircut because of their CDD fee. The person that's their competitor is not in the CDD. You have in Julington Creek and the POA that's in that, which is nothing of what it should have been. Their budget is right about $7.3 million combined. You have Orange Park, a town with a police department whose budget is $7.9 million. And all we're doing is providing community, a beautiful community to live in, but I can go to the swimming pool and have free daycare? Again, why does that, is that something?
These are private, right? They're not, the county doesn't control those.
Well, the county is given by state statute that every single year the county is to review the budget. The county commissioners, not Mr. Wenchek, and not his staff. The county commissioners have not reviewed every single year those budgets, and they are to look at those budgets and review them as to the impact that they're going to make upon the community, the community, and the county as a whole. And if they believe that it is not best for the community, they have the ability to write an opinion that can be published and should be published by the newspaper and by other media sources. And that board put on notice that what you're doing is extreme and it is going to hinder and hurt families. But we don't do that.
So they don't have they have the power of the bully pulpit, is that what you're saying?
They have the power of what?
The bully pulpit?
The bully pulpit. I don't call it a bully pulpit, I call that leadership. I call that I'm taking my responsibility for the office that I was voted into by the public to be able to say to the group that's within the community and say, listen, what you're doing is going to hurt us. We need to really relook at this. This is not good. Why are you doing it? They're actually talking now they're going to they might build a golf course. There's already golf courses there. And provide it free for their people that live in the CDD. That's not the responsibility of what CDDs were ever envisioned to do. It was there to be able to take a part of the cost of the infrastructure building, not build it into immense country clubs and resorts.
But you mentioned Palencia. The people in Palencia knew what they were getting into. They knew the fees, and they have parks, they have walkways, they have a golf course, they have a beautiful community center. People bought into that. They wanted that. They had to go in with their eyes open, knowing what they were getting and knowing that they had to pay for it.
It was not, the only time it was ever revealed was in the first time until this year, until June, I think it is, when the governor they just passed a legislation that did not have to be revealed on a second home buyer. So people have been buying that had no idea. It was was mandatory disclosure. I know of one individual who pays property taxes of approximately $2,800 in Palencia and a fee of $3,800 for Palencia. You've got that is unhealthy upon the economy.
It is unhealthy, but it also keeps the housing prices down in Valencia because that's added cost.
You think so? I don't think that it kept the house. I've looked at buying. Whenever I came here to the county and I was looking to move here and I was going to build, I had my construction license. I was going to build homes, and I said, I'm going to look around. I did, and all this time I continued to look at properties. These properties didn't go down in property value. The builders just went ahead and pocketed it, and went ahead and put it as a CDD. You've got there in Palencia, the builder of Palencia actually put $2.5 million of his own money into that development. The property values of what he sold those property for were not diminished. They were high property values. There was an extreme amount of money that was made. He just didn't have to put his money up for it. No, I disagree with the concept, the precept. The properties, I can go there, or I can come to other parts of the county that didn't have a CDD, and the land property cost was the same. Now, what the amenities that were there perhaps were much more, but who's paying for those amenities and how that was paid for, and what the purpose of what it existed for is what it's all about. And CDDs was not for that. That's not the intent. And I think it's the responsibility of the leaders of the county. That's the Board of Commissioners who are put there by the voters to say that.
Okay, you're running against Mrs. Bennett and Mr. Bryant. Tell us why the voters should vote for you over those two people.
Common sense, number one, with Ken Bryant, and civility.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bryant has a mindset that is very much of a government mindset. He's been employed strictly by the government. He's had a private business, he says, of his own. I know he had a upholstery business that he at one time owned. But for the most part, his mindset has been of receiving from government my guideline of how to work and how to do business. That same model of not being is not going to work going forward. We have to make changes. And so for Ken Bryant, he doesn't have that model in his mindset. He looks to expand in such ways that are going to continue to put a burden upon the taxpayer. Whenever you look at Rachel Bennett, she is primarily in the same boat. She worked. I'll give you a main thing on Rachel. There's not anything that's on Rachel, Miss Bennett, except for one article that's out of the Jacksonville paper. And when I was researching her and I found that, I thought to myself, that article described her view of property rights. She viewed in a case that came before the county, the building department, for a coffee shop that was built next to the Fruit Cove Church, Baptist Church, that property lines for a church begins at the sanctuary and not at the property. And that we all should understand that we've given churches a lot of leeway and that they have a lot of other things that they do, but that their property line begins at the sanctuary. That's incorrect. If I have a business, if I had the record, this property, my property line is where the geographical boundary is set by survey. That's my property line. And so it gives a very big insight onto Ms. Bennett as to how she views property rights. I don't want that type of person leading in my county. She advocates whenever you're looking at, and Ken does also, smart government. Both of them. Ken used it the last time. He's not using it this time in his campaign. He used smart government. Rachel is using it as a keyword, smart government. If you research what smart government is, it is an expansion of government that touches a lot more entities in our life. Everything should be about the government. The government should own all of the green areas. The government should own everything, rather than actually having a master plan and making people live by the master plan. Again, I don't think that's not the proper way to go. I don't think that way. I don't work that way. I'm very much transparent. I'm very civil. I listen to what people are saying. I try to build the consensus. I have a track record of success, of being able to research, and I think that makes a big difference.
Let me put you back to 2006. There was were you here then? Okay, you may recall there was a seismic change, if you will, in the county commission. There was 70,000 houses approved for construction in the county, and there was a voter backlash. Two of the candidates, Karen Stern and Bruce McGuire, both are strong advocates for property rights, and people said, well, enough. We don't need any more houses, we need jobs. And you heard down here, people said, we don't want to look like 210, we don't want to look like Racetrack Road. So you started to hear that. So there was that sort of push those guys out. Now the construction stopped because of the economy. So now the pendulum is swinging the other way. You hear people say, well, we need these jobs, we need these houses. But that's a very ticklish issue. It's the property rights versus the collective rights issue. And it's a tough one because both sides have a good argument. Where do you stand in that debate? Because that issue is clearly going to come back when the economy comes back.
You're in reference to whether or not there should be more development? Is that what your point is?
It's the issue of individual property rights versus collective, the rights of the collective. What happened in 2006 with collective rights said
I think that it should be on property rights.
Mm-hmm.
I don't view collective, the collective rights, or the I view as what it is when we talk about a smart government.
Mm-hmm.
It is what is best for the collective, the mass, the majority of it. And we forget about the individual and the rights of the individual. What's good for the common good is a term. It's the common good.
Mm-hmm.
For the common good, we will we'll take and step in and use eminent domain to take your property because of the common good. Well, I disagree with that. That is, if you research it, and I wrote an article on it, I have it on my website. That isn't what our founding fathers ever envisioned it to be used. They didn't want it. It came from England. The common good of eminent domain was wrong. It still is wrong. If I own the property and I bought the property, I have those rights for that property. Now, if I was asked last night a question concerning Ponte Vedra and how that they have their sign ordinances and how that this is the way our community is and how do you feel that it should be? And I said, that's what exists. If I'm a businessman and I'm coming to do business, I want to do business there, then I live within that. If I don't want to live within that, I don't do business there. I go somewhere else to do it. It's where I can do it the way I want. It's not about the common good. It's what was decided by them. And that's where I would be at. I don't think we have a lot of house properties that's on the books, of houses that are still there waiting to be built. We've got a tremendous inventory of homes that are in foreclosure or will be over the next 18 months. Building additional homes right now is not a wise thing to do.
The county's still approving them.
I know, it's too bad. It's not a wise thing to do. We built our...
But how does that fit with, because that's my individual right as a property owner to come back and say, I'd like this permit, please.
Well, and that's fine. If you own the property and you want to do the permit, I'm talking about a developer coming in and wanting to develop another 200 or 300 homes.
Yeah, but if I'm a developer, I own the property, why can't I develop it? It's my property.
And you can, if you're in a planned area, if this area has been planned and it has been set aside, that this is our master plan and this is where the building is going to be. I tell you what, when I drive south of here and I go down to Flagler County, one of the things that I admire about the county is they actually have a planned out county, it appears. And I've never studied it. I've never really studied them that deeply. But when I drive down the road, I know where the houses are going to be. I know where they're going to put businesses. I know where they're going to have strip centers. I know where they're going to have factories. Industrial, it's laid out. And the infrastructure is there for it. It's we didn't do that. We continue to switch and change and nothing, didn't follow anything. And we have a mess because of what we permitted, and now we've got to come out of it, and it's a big job. What we didn't want to happen up there, we're going to build here on the extension right here that's going to come out from here and cut across to bypass downtown, is going to dump a tremendous amount of traffic right here on us in the center part, and it's going to make expansion. Everybody's going to want to. This, from a business standpoint, we're going to say, wow, this is a great place to be. We got all this traffic coming. So it's going to be wanting to have more. But we don't really have a good plan for that here. But we're operating out of necessity, and we can't. We've got to stop that.
Well, the county does have a development plan. How would you change it?
One of the big things I'd do is I'd actually stay focused and stay up on point with it. We change every time. Whenever something new comes along, we'll readjust it and allow it an exception to take place if it doesn't really meet the consensus of how it is that the county's been laid out, what we've projected, and where we have allocated for monies to be spent, projected ahead, and we're going to have it in those areas. We don't, and we have to. We have to.
I apologize for talking so much. I'm going to shut up now.
I just wanted to say, I've seen you at some of the Tea Party meetings way back,
Yeah.
when they used to meet at the Village Inn. And some of the things you said today seem to reflect the Tea Party platform. Is that kind of where you're going? You support that sort of good, no government is a good government?
Oh no, I think that there has to be some government. I don't think the government should be intrusive. I think that that's what I think personally as a Republican, I think that's what the mainstay of the Republican platform was and is. I think that I'm glad that the Tea Partiers, and I don't call them a political party. They're a group.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have anything formal to them.
No.
But I do like it, and I'm more than glad to be around folks that do have some reflection to look back and say this is the way we started, and this is where we've come to.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily every bit of it was healthy. Some things were. Some things we've evolved into was good, as far as government. But some things we've just continued to expand that aren't. So I don't want to be tied down and say that I'm a Tea Party person. I do like some of the things that they advocate. I believe that it is very conservative, and that I am a Republican and have been since 17 years of age. And whenever I attended my first Young Republicans meeting and in Indiana, and I am extreme conservative and believe in limited government, and that is a Republican platform. So that's what I hope to.
Well, the other thing I said, you mentioned the Meals on Wheels as being an example of something that government should not be into, and I thought that is the purpose of government, to get us out of danger in storms and protect the people with police and fire. But this is another way of protection, is by you don't want old people by themselves starving to death just because to save a few $100,000. I mean, I think that would be you'd want that. I think you would support that rather than see that as an example of government overstepping its line.
I think that I'll give the example from an area that I deal with in the hearing aids. I have patients who take advantage of the system, who have been very wealthy, transferred their money so that they don't have net worth, so they can go on the Medicaid system rolls and get the benefit. They meet the criteria, and I'm not a policeman for the Medicaid, so that's not what I'm hired to do. But I look at that and I say, well, they meet the criteria. The state tells me they meet the criteria, and the entire time I'm there doing that, I'm saying to myself, you got family that are right here with you that I know what their net worth is, and yet you're taking advantage of the system. That's not proper. There are a lot of needy folks that are seniors. There are a lot of families that should be ashamed of themselves. And there's no accountability system that puts that on the family to be that ashamed. Instead, we put it onto the community. In the community, we're good. We step up, and we ought to help those of us around us that are in need. But I think that there should be as much of a steadiness that is there that says to the family that lives in the area, and you're not helping your mom or your dad when they're in need, and they can't go out, how dare you? And it's not strong arming, but by golly, there's some things that need to be. Whenever my dad used to use a switch on me, and it sure did help correct me a lot.
That explains it.
And I look at that and say, gosh, I wish I had a good switch that I could use, because you need a good whipping, because that's not the way you treat your parents. And yet we shift it over to society. And yes, we do that, and we help them. I said to myself this morning, I'm going to give them a frozen TV dinner? Really? and my whole thing is, I mean, my whole thought process was Meals on Wheels. It's a hot meal, at least one a day that we know they're going to get. Maybe you're going to give them two, but you're at least going to get them one. But we're going to give them a TV dinner. And the criteria of the way I read the article was they can't. They're physically not able to take care for themselves and prepare their own meals. They can't go shopping. I'm going to give them a frozen TV dinner, and I'm going to ask them to fix it. I just thought you just said they weren't capable.
You got it.
So why am I giving them a TV dinner?
I never heard that. I just remember my dad got Meals on Wheels when he was infirm, and it was a hot lunch, not a dinner.
They give them like weekends.
Frozen on the weekend?
They get frozen. They get packaged, or at least they used to.
I know I've got a patient that does. He delivers 70 meals
Yeah.
a week himself. He is 75 years old.
Yeah, we have a lot of that.
And they're hot meals, but apparently they have this set up for like weekends. So
Yeah.
I wanted to
It's
ask a question about services. You know, we put a lot of money in this county into health services, and and of course the county health department is a state operation, but is that one thing that government should continue to be doing?
I think we should. Absolutely.
So that would be something we would not check off the list?
No.
All right. What about recreation? I know the families pay something to participate in organized leagues, but like, you know, they have fitness classes that operate, and there isn't any charge for those. So should we be in that business? Because that seems to me to be competitive with Wise and fitness centers.
We do some pretty elaborate. I remember. I always reflect back to my park whenever I grew up as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
The Little League had a ball diamond.
Yeah.
The park didn't, but the Little League did.
Right.
And so if I wanted, I joined the Little League to play that, and they had a fee, and the Little League had the ball diamond, and they built the ball diamond, and that seemed to work pretty good. The kids participated. Today we spend $10 million, $15 million on a park. Jillington Creek, I'll just go up there a lot. The CDD built many of the parks that are up there, not the county.
Right.
And the county has a few, but it's the CDD that has them, and they do it. Now, that was, it used to be you do it as part of a planned development, and but it was a little bit different. It was a homeowners association, or it was a group, and that was the way that it was done. And I don't think there was anything wrong in doing that. If I'm going to do that, I pay that fee. But
County has an extensive swimming pool operation, a major complex over in West Augustine, Solomon Calhoun. Should they be in that business? Have you been over there? I mean, that is a fabulous complex.
It really is. It's beautiful.
And then they argued about fixing the pool that they owned over in Lincolnville.
Yeah, Lincolnville. That's just such a that's non. You've got one that's so hypocritical. You've got one, and you're not going to do the other. The other one was there, and you allowed it to dilapidate and close it down, and as you built this other one, that just doesn't make sense. You have public parks. You have perhaps those are things that are going to referendum, and the taxpayers make that decision. I'm not a big supporter that everything should go on a referendum to the. That's the reason they put us in the position, but we really don't do much. I don't believe the commission does a great job of really getting out and listening to the community and seeing what they really do want.
Well, that was my next question. What exactly does the county commission do besides approve the budget, adopt the budget?
They are.
And I know they do land issues and all of that, but
my view of the role of the county commission is beyond just the normal land development issues and the master plan within the community, and you're dealing with the consensus of roads and how that your transportation routes are working. They're involved in that entire aspect. You've got, I believe, too much where that we have county staff that they give everything to them and they just give them a report rather than them actually getting it and looking at it and working. And I mean, they're paid a pretty good salary and should not just be a manager should actually be out and entrenched within it. I view that their responsibility is to be provide more opportunity to the community to actually interact with them,
The county commissioners, right?
county commissioners, concerning the directions and things that are going on a regular basis. We do 2 meetings a month during the daytime when the average citizen cannot attend. And what we've said to them is we've got a media system, a TV station you can watch what's going on and be informed. In other words, the way I read that, I really don't need your input. I'll just tell you about it. I'll do everything. But I'm not going to make it easy for you to be able to be involved. I just want you to watch. I think that we should have at least 1 meeting a month that's at night for the voters. People will say, well, we've had that and they didn't show up. That's because we've ingrained in them that we really don't want them to show up. I think that there should be town hall forums that are set up continuously. I think that they should be utilizing such tools as Facebook and interaction and being able to read what they're saying and hearing what people are saying and doing. So I think the county should be involved in those things.
I have one last question on this.
It's your last question, thank you.
All right.
I'm the official timekeeper, just in case.
Who works for whom? Does the county commission work for the county administrator, or does the administrator work from the county commission, in your view of what you have observed?
Today, in the current situation,
In the current situation today.
In the current situation today, the commissioners work for the county administrator. That's not the way it should be.
Okay.
Cool. Last comment.
There are a lot of differences that are between me and my competitors. There are there are 3 things that I want to do that are my goals if I'm elected. One is to reduce the budget by appropriating the tax dollars more efficiently. 2 is to reduce the mountain of regulations that are driving the cost of commercial and residential development up. And 3, bring high-paying jobs, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 to St. Johns County, so that our college graduates can come back here to go to work and not leave and go somewhere else. That means we have to expand outside of just looking at the building industry. We've got to move into health and sciences. We've got to move into some industrial. Agriculture has to be a strong point, and we continue to move in those areas.
Alan, thank you for your time.
It's my
We
pleasure.
do appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much, everyone.
And best